What is good, everybody? Epos and I are back to talk quite a few things today. Thanks for all the comments and the feedback on our previous discussion video. So yeah, we're doing it, kind of a Dual Comm Podcast thing where I don't know if there's going to be much frequency to this, but I love getting to discuss gaming and tech and just life stuff with you. So let's do it, dude. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Like, whenever we sit down to do this is the most excited I am to like record anything. I'm ready to rock every time we record anything together. And so I'm super stoked.
I appreciate that. Me too, man. So, well, speaking of feelings, how do you feel after you play a game?
That is the question. So I am going to share an image with you, and we will show this on screen. It is from a thread on r/gaming about someone trying to find alternative games for their kiddo to Roblox. And someone shared their process as they worked through it, and they set their kid down and talked about how Roblox made him feel, how he feels when he's done, how he feels when he doesn't play, and he talked about it before he played and then after he played, and recognized that the feelings didn't entirely align. And last night, I had this same realization as I am looking for a game to play. I had a rare solo night where I could play a game, and I start opening up multiplayer shooters. And of course, they all take forever to load in. And I loaded like 2 different ones before I realized that it just wasn't what I wanted to do. Because I opened the game and I had that feeling of like, I'm going to get in and I'm going to click some heads and it's going to be great. And then I realized it's probably not going to be that great. And I don't want that feeling afterwards of feeling disappointed or let down or not as great as I wanted compared to a single player game.
I really like that idea. So basically, it's a before and after test. How you feel going in, and then a quick test. It's like the exit poll of the gaming session, basically, right? Wow. Okay, so with the multiplayer side, I think what's tough is we go in thinking about all the best memories and moments and clips we've gotten with a game.
Yes.
Thinking, I want to go have that. I want to go have that experience. And then probably 3 matches in, the first game, your teammate disconnected. The second game, you went super positive and carried 3 people who went incredibly negative. The 4th game, they're dropping slurs and nonsense in the chat. And maybe the 5th game, it crashed.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you're like, well, I had an hour to play. And this hour really didn't give me any semblance of that feeling. It's funny that parent did that because we don't really do that.
We don't.
Really, we don't make that intentional step, do we?
No, and you think about how tilted you can get when you're just like, all right, I just, that feeling of I need to stay on for just one more. The next one will be good. Surely the next one will be great and I can end on a high note. Or worse yet, if you actually get one of those good games and you're like, all right, we can keep it going. The next, we'll just keep, this one was great. The next one will be great. And especially with the way the modern systems are at play, any high is met with almost an equal low, if not more.
Yep.
And we don't take care of ourselves in that way.
What did you end up playing? Like, did you continue multiplayer shooters or did you just end the session? Like, I'm assuming it wasn't a very fun session.
It wasn't. I basically started a match and was just like, nope, this isn't what I actually wanted. And it's interesting because, and this is why I always compare multiplayer gaming to solo queue multiplayer gaming. If you're jumping in with a group of friends, it's very different than solo queue. Just like, I got a couple hours, or a couple minutes, I'm gonna jump in. But it's why I always compare it to fast food, because you crave it. You want to just be like, all right, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to play a team deathmatch and I'm going to go 30-0 and it's going to be great. Like, you want that thrill. You want that sweet thing. You want the salty snack, but it has just as likely of a chance to make you not feel great. And so I loaded it up. I was like, I haven't played in forever, which is another red flag if I only have a short amount of time, because it's going to take a lot of warm-up time to start doing great. but I was like, I haven't played in forever. This is going to be great. And as soon as I got into a match, I was like, I don't think this is going to be what I want. And so I actually wound up, and this is something we'll talk about in a later segment. I wound up just playing Halo Infinite's campaign because I've never actually played it all the way through. But there's that difference of it's so much more rare for you to have a negative outcome with a single player game. Like, yeah, if you're playing something that's super like high difficulty, super rough, and like you're just batting your head against the wall trying to beat a boss or something, sure, you can have that moment. But broadly speaking, single player games are designed for you to win ultimately. Like, you are going to accomplish something, even if it's small, and feel a sense of progress, a sense of accomplishment, versus a 50-50 engagement optimized ratio.
There it is. I'm about to dump the spice into the mix here, and people are going to get mad. I think, look, there's nothing wrong with skill-based matchmaking. I have issues with engagement optimized matchmaking. Once the hidden figure behind the curtain is pulling your strings, ensuring that you have X type of experience that is psychologically designed to keep you playing longer with the full intent to get you to buy more stuff within the game, that's not fun, and I believe it is tangible. I believe players can feel it and understand it when they're being sort of manipulated by that hidden hand. I will always go back to Halo 3. There's a social set of playlists and a ranked set of playlists, and you knew going in what type of experience you were going to have. I am totally fine in a social playlist environment having very loose skill-based matchmaking and recognizing you're going to have some matches where you dominate, some where you get crushed, and some that are even. And then in ranked, you're going to search longer, it's going to be sweaty, and you're going in with people matching that mindset. I don't want to sweat 24/7. It's not about beating up on easier players. It's about going in and having a fun experience where everybody loves to come back in and defend the argument of you just want to beat up on easier players. And that's not the truth. I want experiences where new people who've never tried Halo online or a multiplayer shooter online can come in and have a good time and have some guardrails. But that's not really what we're talking about here. The treadmill of 50% win-loss because it is psychologically proven to keep you going on maybe just one more game, maybe just a little bit longer playtime. That has nothing to do with the player's best interest. It literally is for the shareholders to see an engagement stat, which translates into how much money they made in the shop.
I think a big disconnect when we have this conversation now, because it's gone on so long, is people don't realize how differently priorities were when you were playing a game like Halo 3 in a social playlist or context compared to now. Because every game now, pretty much, not literally every game, but most of the major multiplayer games now are so focused on just the pure raw competitive esport optimized whatever. When you queued up in Halo 3 social, yeah, you theoretically, you were playing to win sometimes, most of the time even, but you also went in there and it was a sandbox. You went in there to voice chat. You would end up doing some weird roleplay thing where someone's just suddenly like, I'm going to be Sergeant Johnson. Let's all get in the Warthog and just drive around and, try to hide behind their base instead of actually shooting them. Or you got, like you said, the player who's never played before and who's asking what these things are, and you're like walking them through it, or you're trolling them and you're like, yeah, if you go pick up the invisibility, then it's actually invulnerability. You'll be fine. And then they get killed or something. Like, there's so much more dynamic experiences you have in a sandbox where you're just derping around having fun. And you also get the experience of playing the multiplayer game. Like, if I play split screen with my buddies back when, we didn't have a whole lot of online play and we were playing Halo 2, Halo 3, whatever, sure, we'd have our matches where I'm like, all right, be ours, we're going to fight. I'm going to try to win. I'm going to lose, whatever. But also we'd just explore the map and we'd bounce around and we'd try trick shots and things like that. And you could have that in a sandbox with other people that you're meeting for the first time and partying up and doing other things. And that gets stripped away when it's all rank focused. And like you said, we know that skill-based matchmaking is present in some capacity in those playlists just because you have a degree of a rank to try to kind of coax you. But the experience was a lot more laid back because it's not, like I said, it's not, I want to go stomp on some noobs, I want to pub stomp. I think the Call of Duty YouTube scene kind of portrayed that a lot in the early days where, you know, you had your big Call of Duty YouTubers that just queue pubs and go flawless or whatever. But for a lot of us, I equally want the freedom to be stomped on without making a team of sweaty people angry.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go into a game kind of sleepy. I've had a long day. I just want to relax and be in a familiar mechanical and map environment, and it be okay that I suck.
Yeah.
I want to suck. I don't want to just pub stomp. I want the freedom to suck and not have 10 different people screaming at me because they're 3 hours into their sweat session and this is make or break for them for ruining their night or something because they've been so fueled by this.
I loved Splitgate 1, dude. I played so much Splitgate 1 because it really was like this. You would have games where you stomped. You'd have some kind of even games, but then you'd run into like a solid player who knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you'd just keep bumping into him. It wasn't a huge like player base. It's really fun.
You develop rivalries, invite each other to like 1v1s or just like go hide everyone in one spot of the map and have the one person that isn't in the like in-group running around and be like, where'd everybody go?
Okay, so thinking back to the split screen days, I don't know if this is relevant, but if you had your group of buddies over at the house and you were playing Halo 3 or Halo 2 and it's like a local match, not multiplayer online, let's say there's 4 people there, right? And you just keep running back FFAs or whatever. In any group, there's going to be the superstar, the player that dunks on everybody else, and it's kind of irritating. You're just sort of like, okay, he's going to win every time, right? They're going to just take us out, and it's kind of going to be the same results. You kind of get tired of running that kind of match over and over again. Unless you're training, unless there's the goal of like, I'm playing somebody better, I want to improve. Everybody sort of knows how the hierarchy falls in that friend group. Like, I'm going to be second, this dude's going to be first, that guy's going to be fourth because he still doesn't even know how to like pick up a weapon off the map or whatever.
Yep.
And I feel like the modern SBMM model is you are playing the same kind of players all day and night. Yes. Over and over again. And that same match, that same experience, I'm bored of it, you know? I believe that's why when we have that free time, the players who did boot up Social Halo 3 to have just a relaxing time or to have that freedom to play, maybe not their best that day, now they're playing Helldivers 2, or they're playing Deep Rock Galactic or a single player experience. I think you've seen a lot of people who used to play multiplayer stuff just go, look, it's not the same. It's not for me. I'm going to go to something that is fun. So that at the end of the hour, when they do that test, the feelings test, they can literally be like, yeah, that was a pretty fun hour. And I got to choose how I spent that hour.
Yes.
That's a really interesting concept.
I think, obviously, whatever happens in the experience can influence those feelings too. But I also think just feeling like you're in control of what you did impacts those feelings too. Like, I think when you're like, yeah, I sat down and wanted to play this game and that's what I got to do, rather than I sat down wanting to chase this feeling of being good or the memories of good matches and I didn't get that out of control feeling contributes negatively. But yeah, I think those people that moved on probably without realizing it did the feelings test and felt it out. Meanwhile, I think there's massive populations of multiplayer gamers that haven't done this yet and just feel trapped in like the tilt swirl of this is what I've always done. It should still be for me, and it's not anymore. And I think you and me both were trapped there for a while until like this year, basically.
You summed up my year where I have been robotically just booting up multiplayer FPS games because of the love that was built for that genre growing up, and especially in the Halo days. And then being able to tell myself, no, I don't really like BRs as much. I don't really like running Apex anymore. I don't want to get that experience or sweat that much. It was very freeing stepping away from that. And yeah,
And it doesn't mean you have to give it up. We could still go run some customs lobbies and have fun, or even queue up like when you schedule time with people. But just blindly solo queuing at like 11 p.m. maybe not the best decision.
That's truth. That's truth right there. I was just thinking and talking about this in a video. My first year of college, in the dorms, it was a building over. I had some friends over there, and in their little pod of 6 people, after dinner, they would play Smash Brawl. And so it was this ritual that after every dinner, we would go over to this dude's pod and we would take turns, and it would just be Brawl for an hour or two. And it was, I suck at Smash, but it was so fun to play that with other people. And the same thing, I played Halo 3 online, split screen with my roommate in college on a 17-inch little TV. It was tiny. It was ridiculous. And we were both just leaned in, super enjoyed the experience. That's how I played most of Reach, was split screen with a friend. So the remedy to all of this probably is, play with friends. But, that argument's kind of silly because doing anything with friends is pretty much more fun, right?
Yeah.
It could be a really boring experience, and it's like with a buddy, it can really be transformative. So, well, let's talk then about some cool single player games, because you, I know, have been into the PlayStation 3 lately.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about God of War on the previous video. So let's dive in on this. I want to talk about some favorite PS3 games, the experiences, the legacy of the whole thing, and maybe just memories that you have. What made PlayStation 3 special, just off the top of your head, like the thing that immediately jumps out at you when you think about booting up that console?
There is something about it that just feels like the future. And sometimes even a future we never got. But like even booting it up today, going through the XMB, the user interface, the crossbar menu as it was weirdly called, like seeing all the different categories of stuff. This was the first time we had, obviously the PS2 and the Xbox could play DVDs, but like to have dedicated, we could store videos on this thing and play them from the menu, and music, and eventually it got streaming apps. So we had categories for all this stuff. The original fat PS3 was basically a computer. It had memory card slots. It supported printers. It had a web browser. It felt like it was, and all the polish. It feels like a sci-fi, dystopian movies, like user interface with all the charm of the little dings and the music and the high definition UI. It just feels like I'm stepping into an optimistic future of what a console could be and what games could give to us. And it supported so many features that ultimately were never really used. And I think it's because it was just that far ahead of its time.
I was typing there because you reminded me of a memory I didn't even think about until now. I was really late to the PS3. The price tag was way too much. I was on the 360, and I basically took the stance of, no, I cannot drop that kind of dough. It wasn't even a possibility. I was working all the way through college, and I knew, like, there's no way I'm going to sacrifice food budget for something like that. But when I did get the PS3 Slim, and it was, like, much cheaper, I don't remember. So original Super Gucci version was $600, right? The like OG PS3. And then did the Slim go down to $300?
Yes. I was about to say, I'm pretty sure I got my Slim for like $299.
I think that's when I hopped in as well. And it might have been one of those things where, I don't know, I went in on it with my folks for Christmas or something. And
that's exactly how I got mine.
Yeah, dude, I have such attachment for consoles that were like gifts or things like that.
Yep.
So I had a PSP that I'm upset. I lost it. There was a move that happened a few years ago, and I've looked in every box I own, and I cannot find my old PSP. And I want to buy a new one, a used one on eBay. Anyway, the PS3 had remote play. I remember playing Final Fantasy VII PlayStation 1, I think, on my PSP in bed next to the PS3. And like, I know that's stupid now because we're in the world of handhelds, but
at the time,
ludicrous to me. And I'm sure there was input lag, right? If I went back and tried that feature, it probably is sucky. But I think I played a lot of Final Fantasy VII PlayStation 1 that way. And that's the future I think you're referencing, where it still feels like when you boot up that XMB, like the coolest menu design, put your photos on this thing, load up music, and then the Blu-ray player They were able to
Yes.
emulate kind of that hype that the PlayStation 2 had. It was one of the most affordable little Blu-ray players you could get at the time, even though it was ridiculously expensive, right? Or maybe that was just part of the value prop.
No, I mean, early on, it was still the Blu-ray player to get. And especially as it got cheaper. Not too long after the Slim, we started seeing a lot cheaper Blu-ray players, but for a while there, just like the PS2, it was like the player to get. And it helped that it was the value prop. But it felt like the one console where everything they could possibly put in it, they put in it. They literally put a PS2 in it. they put computer accessories and hardware and all these future-looking features that today would go over really well and no one wants to do anymore. But at the time, I think it was so outlandish to go from a little box that you put a disc in, a memory card in, and played a couple games to this all-encompassing device that I don't think everyone was on board just because they couldn't actually see the use cases yet.
You want to sell me on a console in a second. Tell me there's hardware level backwards compatibility.
Yes.
And you've instantly won me over entirely because it shows appreciation for you supporting the previous console generation. It shows them having respect for players who bought and invested in that ecosystem. And I'll tell you what, the idea of, I would love one of the OG fat PS3s just for that PlayStation 2, hardware level playability there. I still have my PS2, so it's not like a huge deal, but that's a big deal to me that I can throw a PlayStation 1 disc in, and I played a lot of PlayStation 1 on the PS3. And now, not to shift the conversation, but the worst part about all of this is systems that say we don't need to put in hardware level backwards compatibility. We don't need a disk drive at all. It's just going to be the Netflix of games. You'll pay us a subscription forever, and you can play a really poorly emulated version of this on our new system. And that just kind of stinks. I mean, Nintendo Switch Online, their virtual console quality has varied over the different systems, right?
Go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to say, I don't understand how their emulation quality has been so poor for so long, both because the most popular emulators out there are for Nintendo systems and have had most of them dialed for years and years. And the early ones are some of the easiest systems to emulate in the first place. Like, there's no performance excuse. There's no one else has figured it out yet. Like, of all systems, the Nintendo ones are already dialed, and Nintendo just doesn't want to do it right.
It's either laziness, negligence, or just complete ignorance on their part. There's a really good YouTube video by Nerl about this, where I think he brought up the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, the limited time game where you got Galaxy.
Was a weird thing on its own.
64. And he goes through each of the three titles in there, and Sunshine. That's a third.
Yes.
It sucks compared to what the scene has been doing. And with minimal amounts of effort, they could have done something really special. And so I think similarly, like PlayStation 3, I don't think we're going to get a PlayStation 6 that's going to super honor backwards compatibility in the same way. They're probably going to go, look, it's a streaming library. You have access to this. You pay us a monthly subscription. I wish they would step up the emulation game, though. Go to the scene, go with the people in the community who have been making and putting the time in, because I'm less apprehensive and frustrated. It's not the universe I want. I think physical ownership is killer. That's the way to go for sure. But if we are going to have to live in the dystopian future of everything is just streaming for our older titles in like a Sony ecosystem, at least make the emulation freaking top notch. Anyway, I went way off the rails there. Tell me a couple of your favorite PS3 games. I'm going to grab a GameStop receipt out of my closet, and I will be right back.
Okay.
So go for it.
Resistance Fall of Man is one of the most coolest shooters that kind of sparked a lot of similar, weird sci-fi shooters that came after it, but just a blend of what you kind of expect from your slower paced shooter story. Plays a little bit like your Call of Duties, but a lot more slower paced, almost like a Half-Life in terms of you're not just sprinting and bouncing and blasting everyone super quickly. Super cool sci-fi alternate history kind of shooter. Heavenly Sword is a DMC or God of War style hack and slash that has a really unique story. Combat is addictive as can be, and it was one of the first games to use the like 6-axis stuff in the PS3 controller. And so you had sometimes it's annoying, and like currently I'm playing a bunch of PS3 games with a controller that doesn't have that, so I can't even progress on those sections at the moment. But the game itself is a lot of fun. It is super flawed in terms of performance. It is pushing the PS3 beyond its limits, and performance tanks like crazy. I would love to see this game remade on modern hardware with locked-in performance. And it's made by the same devs that made Hellblade. And
really?
DMC Devil May Cry.
It's the same people that went on to do the Hellblade games?
Yes.
I've never played the Hellblade games.
So
it just never has like appealed to me, but that kind of goes back to our PS3 discussion into The Last of Us or the Naughty Dogification of gaming, because it's like, this looks sick. The gameplay for this looks super fun. Now the IGN review has gnarly screen tearing, but
yeah, you can see some of their roots that you see in Hellblade in Heavenly Sword. In that, I'm grabbing my box copy. You can see they put a lot of effort into motion capture and making the faces super photorealistic. It's directed by Andy Serkis for the mocap. Like, you have Golem directing how they captured the facial animations.
That's so cool.
Like, you can, this is a much more combat and like action focused game, but you can see their interest and their specialization in this like more realistic processes that they have obsessed with Hellblade all the way back in this game.
Incredible.
And so it is a blast. Like I said, I would love to see it revisited. This was a PlayStation exclusive game, and now Ninja Theory is owned by Xbox, so that's not likely to happen, but it's great and worth checking out even with the terrible frame rate.
So when I was recording PlayStation 3 stuff, just this last week, I pulled out my box copy of Metal Gear Solid 4, and inside is a GameStop receipt here that just got me nostalgic. So Matthew at GameStop on January 3rd, 2011, helped me pick up a copy of Little Big Planet Game of the Year.
Yes!
Lego Star Wars, The Complete Saga, and Metal Gear Solid 4. MGS4 I got for $10 used. Lego Star Wars was $20 and Little Big Planet was $30. So for the grand total of $64.71, 3 incredibly fun games. Little Big Planet is sick. I love that game, and anybody can play that game and have fun. You can be a good platformer. You can be a creative level builder. You could just be somebody who doesn't even like games at all, and it is like one of those eye-catching franchises that now is just pretty much gone, right? They had the PS5, is it the Sackboy game or whatever it was called? But it's not really Little Big Planet, right?
Right. No, it's, hey, we still have this character, let's do something. It's more of like a story kind of platforming thing, kind of like a pre-Astrobot demo.
Okay.
That kind of game. But yeah, I mean, it was a huge creative sandbox, and they had these big online, like, file sharing things that you could upload your levels and your creations and share them with each other. Like, it was amazing. And I feel like in today's kind of creative gaming world, it could do really well, but someone up top has decided it won't, I guess.
Funny, man. Things have just changed, haven't they? Uncharted 2. I think about the system, and to me, that might be my favorite, one of my favorites on this system. It's my favorite Uncharted game by far. I'll always remember that train sequence. This, to me, was a perfect gamey game, but also movie, and what a lovely franchise, where you're taking the best of like Indiana Jones and turning it into this new original-ish character.
Yes.
Game was sick.
Admittedly, I am a weird person in that I've pretty much only played 1 and 3.
Oh,
I didn't get to play 2
dude.
yet. But as a childhood lover of the Tomb Raider games, this felt like the next evolution of that in many ways. And it always blew my mind, just like the scale that they put out in those games. I'm pretty sure I watched a buddy play through most of 2, like in person. I think that's why I didn't play it. Like I was at someone's house and he just wound up booting it up and we just played through a lot of it. Similarly, you have Killzone 2 on your list. I didn't play 2, but I played 1 and 3 again. I don't know what this is. I don't usually skip sequels.
I threw the note in thinking you would play this one. I've never played a Killzone game other than like 20 minutes of a PlayStation 2, the original on PlayStation 2. I know. What's the one I need to play?
I'd play 3.
Okay. Is that the PS3?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard because mechanically it is rough to play. It is heavy and sluggish by design. And so it feels like there's a ton of input latency, but it's like intentional. I'd say maybe if you want an easier time mechanically jumping in with 4 is fine. And that's on the PS4 and it is beautiful. Killzone 3 is a beautiful game. And it's one of those where if you play it on PS3, you're going to like it. But if you get the chance to load it up in the emulator and like max it out, like you would not believe this was a game developed for a console that came out in 2006.
That's insane.
It looks incredible once you kind of open up the hardware limitations. And I feel that way about so many PS3 games. I booted up yesterday Demon's Souls. And I have a bunch of memories about Demon's Souls and a couple other games since you brought up GameStop that I want to share in a minute. But I booted up Demon's Souls. And I remember watching a dude called Wrath something on YouTube do a Demon's Souls Let's Play. He was like the only one doing it because it was a hardcore game. And it looked so freaking cool and blew my mind. And then I booted it up yesterday. And like, I try to keep, a pretty balanced perspective about what games look like now versus then. But I was kind of shocked at how dated it looked. Like, it's one of those games, kind of like Oblivion, where you can tell it's almost like a PS2 era engine kind of running on the PS3. But the closer I looked, the more wrong I was about that. It has so many beautiful effects and like rendering techniques that are just, it looks like a game. It looks like a more modern game that's actually just running on low settings. Like it just looks like it's been dialed back, and you can tell that the engine was capable of so much more. The hardware just couldn't cut it. And there are so many PS3 games like that you can just tell with a little extra hardware or freedom or whatever, it would look amazing.
Gosh, I think I'm going to order Killzone 3.
Yes.
The PS4 one looks like it's reviewed a little bit lower.
It was a launch title pretty much. Like it was not taken super great, but I think it's okay.
Trying to think what other MGS was a big one for me. Like Metal Gear Solid 4 was quite an experience. I'm kind of an MGS nerd. It's definitely top 5 games of all time. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 in my mind are far better. Like the more you know about Kojima and like his sentiment towards MGS 4. There's lots of stuff and it's great. But the Blue Point HD collection for Metal Gear Solid that is on the PlayStation 3 is unbelievably good. You've got Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, and Peace Walker, which is the PSP game. And honestly, the gameplay in Peace Walker is probably the best up until we got the Phantom Pain and Ground Zeroes, basically. But loved the HD collections and the remasters on this system. The Echo and Shadow of the Colossus collection, God of War got their collection.
They got multiple collections.
God of War 2. Yeah.
There was the Origins collection and the Saga collection. Neither of which included Ascension, by the way.
You know what's funny? You mentioning Ascension in a video we recorded a while back, like it just didn't even click with me. I'm like, I don't even remember that God of War.
No one
game,
does.
dude.
That's the funny thing is it is basically the same. I mean, it's not like I'm going to say this facetiously, but like if you look at it at a glance, it is the same premise as the 2018 game, but as a prequel because it's him seeking like this isn't what happens in 2018. I know that, but like the premise is join Kratos before the God of War games as he seeks vengeance for his family. Like it's them doing the first stab at like, okay, let's look at Kratos from his family perspective because he had a family in the original games before the 2018 family. But it still plays like the older
the old
games.
combat.
And it's another one of those games that actually is running at a lower resolution than God of War 3 because they pumped up the graphics so much, and you could see how it could look amazing, but it's dropped down to 720p and scaled back a little bit because the hardware just can't keep up with it.
I have two more of these HD collection games, and one is my favorite game of all time. So Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5, yes. Those collections are phenomenal. They bring you like a final mix version of those games.
That was at the
ran
end of the
better,
console.
It looked better. Oh, incredible ways to play Kingdom Hearts. Final Fantasy X got its HD remaster for PlayStation 3. And Final Fantasy X is my favorite game of all time. It's my favorite PlayStation 2 game of all time. And thank goodness they did a really great job on that remaster. And it was so cool just seeing how well they preserved PlayStation 2 in PS3, showed how it could be improved upon instead of just abandoning these pillar franchises altogether. I was just Googling, by the way, side story. Persona 5 had a PS3 release. Like, what? That's crazy.
Dude, I have a script still saved in my Google Docs from like 8 years ago when we were going to talk about HD packs on PS3 because they've just been that consistently like important to us over the years. I truly believe the PS3 was the best value gaming console in terms of buying the games now that we're talking about this, because it's the only console that I have just stacks of packs for. So the HD ones you mentioned, I've also got the Zone of the Enders HD collection. I've got the Devil May Cry HD collection. And all of these, like you said, they're just preserving the PS2 game, letting them run a little higher res, little unlocked, but otherwise like you're not sacrificing anything. I've got Oddworld Stranger's Wrath HD. And then I've got a bunch of multi-packs. Like I've got the Ultimate Stealth triple pack, which has Thief, Hitman Absolution, and Deus Ex Human Revolution just in one game. Just because they could fit it on the Blu-ray. And then I've got dual packs for Resistance 1 and 2 and Uncharted 1 and 2. And then I've got they had the PlayStation Greatest Hits, the PlayStation Favorites, and then they had a single volume. They called it Volume 1 and never did another, of like PlayStation Network Greatest Hits that had like Journey and a couple other games on. And then I have another one that's a pack of indie games. And it's like, you could just spend $20 or $30 and get multiple games at a time on repeat on this system that they never really did anywhere else.
I love this system. Now I'm like way more sold. You just reminded me of so much. Okay, what you just said is perfect. I want to look. Developers or maybe publishers are kind of afraid of this old graphics look, I think. And when you talk about those HD collections, let me just pitch something here. Shadow of the Colossus on PlayStation 2. Masterpiece. Incredible game. There's a reason it had a PS3 and PS4 release. Okay. Now the PS3 release is Eco and Shadow of the Colossus bundled in together. And it is essentially just the game running a bit better, looking a bit nicer. But it is still very much pretty much the same game. I'll talk about a bug in a second. But very much just a better way to play the game. I hear about the Zone of the Enders collection. And again, pretty much just a better way to play the game with a little bit improved performance. But it's not night and day different. PlayStation 4 comes along and they do a full rebuild, full remake of Shadow of the Colossus with new textures and graphics and lighting, and it is gorgeous. They made it a PSN game, and I've played it off and on, and it is very cool to see what it can do, but it does not play the same. It is not the same. Okay, and it's fine. I'm happy that it didn't just get another rebuild of the exact same thing. But I am totally down with old graphics of the 2000s without having to try and mess with them and overhaul them and change them in some really big and meaningful way. I love gameplay over graphics. There can be story, blockbuster, cinematic games. We've talked about this. That is totally cool. But not everything needs that treatment. Sometimes you just want to play that game on a new system with a little bit of performance tweaks, not an entire complete overhaul rebuild that takes 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, like why can't we just have games lightly ported up to new consoles and sold at the current market rate? It's very little investment compared to the millions and millions of dollars for a remake or remaster, and just keeps games accessible, especially for systems where there is a gap in the backwards compatibility. Like, the HD collections were very much a consequence of the PS3 having to get rid of its hardware backwards compatibility. But that's an acceptable compromise. Like, in an ideal world, we'd be able to put every disc in every system and just play or whatever, sure. But paying $20 to just get a ported version is a lot better than paying $70 for a remade version that's going to change something that we don't like, ultimately. Like, someone is... And I think there are games that need remade. I think especially games that either just truly did not create what the creators wanted or that don't play properly. I think that deserves a full rework. Like with Heavenly Sword, like it ran so poorly on PS3 that I don't think just an emulated port would make sense. Like I think you need to remake it with modern techniques so that it can run the way it was meant to. But a lot of these games, like I just want to play them. I just want to play it on a new system. And yeah.
Well, real quick, before I forget, I wrote this note down. Not to gush about Shadow of the Colossus PS3, because it has one major issue that I didn't know about the first time I played through it. I don't know the exact details. I've looked it up. There's super old GameFAQs threads and forums about this, but there's a bug where your grip meter runs out faster because I think the performance changed or the physics changed. And so monsters shake more, your grip drains more. So you spend a bunch more time just like as Wander holding on to the back of the giant thing like, oh my gosh. And if you go and play the PlayStation 2 version, it's much less intrusive. And it's more, obviously, it's the experience that the developers intended on PS2. And they messed that up on the PS3 version. And that's one of those things where, for me, that's a deal killer, right? Those are things where I'm like, look, the gameplay is not what the original was. I want to play the developer's vision for this.
Right.
And it's a bummer because that can really taint some of those collections and things. And that overlaps with sort of the dissonance there where I'm totally cool with the PS4 Shadow of the Colossus. It's freaking rad. But I don't want to lose out on the games that preserve the gameplay. If there's extra input latency, if it's, from a gameplay perspective, if it's worse, that is a failure in terms of an HD collection or a remaster in my mind. And I would rather go play it on the old system rather than play the compromised gameplay version, even if it's prettier,
right?
You know?
Yeah, because ultimately how you play it is what matters most. Prettier works for the marketing and for streams, I guess. But if you're going to sit down and play it, how it plays matter. And it felt like for a while, almost every remake we were getting had some issue like that. Like I remember the Heavy Rain remake for PS4 had tons of issues from an already kind of buggy game, but like some of those things were made so much worse. And it's like, why not just preserve what was there, then introduce more problems? And then you think about that and we get into the whole complicated legacy of like Master Chief Collection and preserving the PC versus the Xbox side. Like it's not, there's no easy answer for some things, but I do think the HD Collection era kind of showed us that a lot of people just want to play games and like you can just kind of let some sliders go a little loose and otherwise provide the same experience. And the value is so much higher to the player ultimately, because they're just getting games that they didn't have access to. And that's why I loved the God of War 3 quote unquote remaster on PS4. Like they call it a remaster, but they didn't really do, like they just unlocked it. Like it runs at a native 1080p 60, whereas it had some limitations on the PS3, even though it was quoted as like the true 1080p game. It wasn't really. And, you know, games back then may have outputted 1080p, but they certainly weren't rendering at HD.
Yeah.
And so it looks beautiful. It's silky smooth. And it required so little work by compare. I mean, I'm not a developer. I don't want to understate the work required, especially porting from the PS3 to a modern system. Like, I understand there is work. But compared to making the game over from the ground up with entirely new engines, the scale of work is so much smaller. And it feels like a trend that we had in the early to late 2010s, where every game or every port of really retro games that from were like the Super Nintendo era, everyone wanted to apply these weird filters to all the pixel art. They wanted to smooth it or blur it or make it look fake 3D or something instead of just giving us pixel art games. And a lot of people didn't care. They truly didn't care, and they just played, and it was fine. But there were a lot of us that were just like, this doesn't even begin to look like what we remember. What is happening here? What's wrong with the original graphics? And it took until very recently for pixel art to kind of take off as a trend and us to embrace it. And now we're seeing like all of the M2 collections and ports where they're doing a great job with integer scaling on the pixel art and proper CRT filters and all of that to really kind of make it accepted. But it feels like we go through a staggered phase of whatever 2 generations ago was. We just don't accept those graphics anymore. Like everyone wanted to avoid the PS1 look for so long, and now PS1 graphics is like its own genre now.
Yeah, so hype in the indie scene, and I love it. I'm a complete sucker for that low poly style. Okay, I love that games are being made with modern controls and unlocked frame rates. Like Crow Country, I was playing the demo the other day. It's like a PS1 tank control horror game. Yeah. You can play with tank controls, or you can play it with a more modern control scheme. It is awesome, and it's funny you bring up all that stuff because my mind immediately goes to like Square Enix and their pixel remasters, and like their quality is all over the place.
Yes.
You have to watch so many videos or do your research to find out what is the best way to play the game because of so many re-releases that just stink. The Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, something that should have been absolutely hype, has so many missing graphics options and crashes and limitations. And like when I brought this up in a previous video, they were like, hey, it was patched. They released a patch for it. All it did was like minor things. The game running at high speeds, that's all. And I want people to know going in, what is the best way to play this game? The Blue Point HD collection for Metal Gear Solid is phenomenal on PS3 and the 360. Maybe the community has helped Master Collection with some of the other elements, but it should never be a discussion. As the consumer, if you're buying Metal Gear Solid, the Master Collection, and whatever year you're buying it, you shouldn't have to wonder if it is a worse version of a game that came out a long time ago. This is stupid. Why are we praising them for patching a broken thing?
Yeah.
Ugh. MCC all over again.
Yeah. It feels like it's only good to preserve the original thing when there's enough nostalgia for it versus just trying to like convince you to rebuy the thing. And so we have nostalgia for PS1 and pixel art graphics now, but I guess we don't have enough societal nostalgia for like true Y2K graphics yet. And so then we have the Warcraft remasters. They did Warcraft 3 Reforged, which has had lots of issues, and then they just surprise dropped a quote unquote remaster of 1 and 2, and it looks like they just ran the original graphics through like an AI image upscaler or something.
Oh no.
And it doesn't look great. And it's like, why couldn't you have just like updated the output so it supported widescreen and, you know, modern stuff and just accepted that, yeah, the game was made forever ago. And that's fine. This is the legacy of the franchise. Don't try to fool us into thinking the game looked better than it did, because that's where the games came from.
I'm looking at the images here. They're cash grabs.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. It's like, what is the easiest way that we can repurpose our content and get new money from it?
But that's the thing. So, I could just buy I have my own, but like you could just buy on eBay the discs for Warcraft 1 and 2, and you can more or less get them running on modern computers. Like, why not sell us those and make money?
There's the decompiled version of a bunch of Nintendo 64 games, meaning you can run it on PC. And this is the argument brought up with the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. The emulated version of Super Mario 64 in there, it's bare bones and it stinks. And Nintendo could print money. They have the source code for this stuff. I refuse to believe that they don't have the capability to give us something better. And I cannot imagine it would task resources that much if the community of volunteers out here have made things substantially better.
Yeah, especially if they're already making their own version anyway. Like it's so weird. And we've seen such a regression with backwards compatibility. Like we were talking about how great the PS3 was with it. Xbox has had a pretty high point with backwards compatibility until recent years. Like they've done an okay job. They've just not had as lengthy of a console history to go back to yet. But even the PS5 stuff, they started finally putting out PS2 emulation stuff on the PS5, and they've improved it a lot based on like feedback from Digital Foundry and stuff. But like, it feels like that was the easiest slam dunk ever. And even then, like, the PS5 is so powerful. Why can I not put in my PS2 DVD, and just play it? Like, they should just have an emulator that just plays the games. They don't got to worry about licensing because you just source your own, or you can buy, if you don't want to buy a disc or you don't, whatever, you can buy the ones that they do have licenses for.
Yep.
Like, Xbox has always been great about just like, you put in the game and if it can work, it's just going to work. And on the newer ones, you have to download stuff, but like, it's still, you get to bring your own stuff to the party. And Nintendo was really good about that for a long time. Like we were just talking about in our own chats, the 3DS and how it still has hardware compatibility with the Game Boy Advance, even though they never officially supported it. Yep. And it's like, they have always just iterated on their past hardware, where the GameCube was an evolution of the Nintendo 64 in some ways, and the Wii was just a souped up GameCube, and then the Wii U was the Wii with some stuff tacked onto it, so it always had some compatibility there. And then after a certain point, they're just like, no, you would like a blurry download version of like a few games, right? You don't want to play 20 years of Pokemon games on the Switch, you just want to play these ones.
Yeah. I was going to say Xbox in the last 5-7 years. They're pretty freaking awesome in this regard.
Yes.
Because you can play 360 games with enhancements and things that you would never expect. Final Fantasy 13 on the 360. On the
Who would have
original
thought
release,
the Xbox version of that would become the better version?
the better version of the game, where they went back and they took the PS3 FMVs, the videos, which were higher resolution because the PS3 had the Blu-ray side, right? So the disc had more data. And then they brought that into the Xbox One backwards compat version of the game. So if you have the One X or a series or whatever, it plays and looks really well. And I think that is such a testament to a team that Xbox is literally putting on making sure that the backwards compat titles are tested, they're optimized, effort is put in. Not all of them are better, but there's care. And it's easy to dunk on Xbox because I'm kind of like, what are they doing right now? It seems, I don't necessarily see the vision that they have, but I can safely say, really happy I still have this One X over here because there's plenty of titles that is the best way to play, and collecting for that system is super cheap. And Xbox has probably lost money on that division. The amount of money they've put into the backwards compat and those teams who are doing it, I can't imagine it's something that brings in tons of revenue and dollars for them. But that's a gamer first initiative. That's a player first initiative where it's like, they don't get enough praise for that.
Yeah, it made it seem like they care. Like I was a champion of Xbox for a long time until the past couple years because of that kind of thing. Like it showed that they cared about the gaming experience above all else, and keeping that if you have an Xbox, you will play Xbox games regardless of whatever number came after that. And like even the games that they didn't handcraft like crazy pseudo remasters for, many of them, I'm not going to say most because I haven't looked at the exact list, but like so many that don't even have enhancements, you can still just play like natively. Like when I was going through and playing Battlefield 3 before the server shut down, it does not have any improvements at all, but you can play it. You can just pop it in. You don't even have to download anything. You pop in the disc, whatever, you install the HD texture pack off disc 2 or whatever, but then you just play. And sure, it has the same performance issues as the first system, but as we just established, that's better than spending a bunch of money and making it worse.
Yep. Yeah.
I
I miss this era, dude.
Yes.
Like, and not to, I don't want ever the conversations to boil down to new bad, old good.
No.
'Cause that's not true whatsoever. And
we brought
honestly,
up Demon Souls earlier. The
Yeah,
Blue
yeah.
Point Demon Souls is one of the most gorgeous glow ups of a game I've ever seen in my life. And there's some arguments about like it losing certain stylistic characteristics or whatever, but like, oh boy, is that
Yeah.
a showpiece for the PS5. And that's great. There
I
are
want
new
a
things
PS5
that
for
are good, but the trend is not great.
This is, we're always going to get these comments when we have these discussions. There's players who started their gaming journey, maybe PlayStation 4 onward, who hear some of these talks and just respond super angry or negative towards it. And it makes talking about games a little bit less fun because it's just a discussion talking about ways games can be better without
Yes.
being overly negative. I guess what I'm trying to say here is we grew up on the schoolyard talking about this kind of stuff for the games we were playing and what we liked and what we didn't. And it never turned into the way discourse online now is, which is just you versus me. If you don't see it my way, you're the worst. I hate you. And it has made, honestly, game discourse just a little bit less fun. Everything has this weird toxic undercurrent that doesn't need to come into the conversation. Hey, we all really like games.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some really awesome things that are releasing right now. So let's just talk about it in a chill way. Elements from the past that are cool, elements from that now that are amazing. And it isn't always old versus new. And I think a lot of the new player generation comes in with their guard up, ready to throw fists over these kind of conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like no one who has a critique of the new thing is saying you are bad for liking it. Like
Yeah.
if you played the new version of a game and you were fine with it, like if you didn't find PS4's Shadow of the Colossus super difficult and you loved the graphics and can't imagine going back and playing some decrepit looking PS2 version, that's great. That's fine. But we just want some degree of a compromise that can make everyone happy, or at least we're going to express that we want the improvements that could be relatively easily brought forward. And I think it's an inherent nature. You brought up the schoolyard kind of conversation. There is a vibe you get when you're talking in a group in person, just like throwing ideas back and forth, that is supposed to be felt when you're talking in a group online. But due to the communication kind of channels, it doesn't come out that way. And even just like what we're doing right now, like you and I are talking to each other, and anything we say that might critique something that the other doesn't like, we're not going to take that way. But to a viewer, it might feel like, it's a one way, we're talking at them. Therefore, if they disagree, they are not a direct part of the real time conversation. So they must be like, they must defend it inherently. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I think back to my favorite era with gaming magazines, and often they would have a little editor's letter at the start where someone wrote in some really nasty email or mailed in a letter, like trashing someone's game review. And the editor or the author of that review or whatever would have a fun, kind of sarcastic, but also like down to earth response of like, well, that part is silly, but if you like it, that's totally fine. I'm just looking at it from this perspective. But the person reading the magazine was like sitting there fuming because this is their favorite game and it got a 6 out of 10 or something. And I think that was the ancestor to what we see now. And it's just a nature of the single directional kind of conversations that online stuff allows for.
Yes. It's team sports. It's a win and a loss instead of a conversation.
Yes.
And that's not anybody listening to this. Go form your own thoughts and stories and opinions about the stuff that you enjoy and the things that you don't. I think that's okay. Weird story. Went to a lunch last week at a local burger spot. It's near the local high school.
Mhm.
And the high schoolers all are coming at the same time. And it was really weird for me. I felt incredibly old because they all are wearing 90s grunge style clothing, like really big, baggy, almost Jinko kind of style jeans.
Yep.
And they looked like carbon copies of one another. They were all wearing that style. And I looked at it and I went, oh, yeah, that's right. High school is awful. Like everybody's trying to fit in. It's extraordinarily hard. Like you can see it now that we're away from it and we're older and we really don't care. Like we've learned to discern whose feedback we give a rip about and whose we don't. But seeing that and that pressure to fit in and pressure to basically be the same, to do the thing, I think when people are talking about games or media or their hobbies or whatever, the internet has made it to where there has to be one or two popular opinions that you align with and you go with. And if you don't, you're somehow wrong. Forget that. Anybody listening to this is their own person who gets to come up with whatever opinions about the stuff in the media and the games they play. And they should be freaking confident about that and be confident in their own thoughts. We've talked about this before. If you are forming your opinions just based off of secondhand feedback, like you haven't actually played the game, go try it and find it for yourself.
I'm going to loop two thoughts to this that will sound disjointed, but they aren't. One is my biggest pet peeve whenever we have these discussions is when someone says, or like I put out like my videos about a console like the PS3 or the PS2, and someone's just like, you're just living in nostalgia, man. It's time to get with the times. Because I'm not. I still buy and play modern games all the time. I just have a experienced, informed opinion. It doesn't mean mine's more right, but it is my informed opinion from decades now of gaming, and I'm still immersing myself in the new. I'm not avoiding it out of nostalgia. I'm just trying to balance it. And people often jump to, well, if old's good and new bad, then rar. But I also think back to like 10 or so years ago, the late Total Biscuit really struggled with feedback on reviews once YouTuber reviews became more common, because everyone got obsessed with this idea of lack of bias and the idea that if your review stood out from everyone else, it's because you were biased or you weren't objective enough. And he railed pretty hard against that idea because every reviewer under the sun, especially with a hobby medium like games, is biased. They grew up with certain systems and games. They had access to certain systems and games. They have preferences of genres, of mechanics, of graphic styles. You cannot be unbiased when it comes to liking a game or liking how it is played. And he always argued that you need you either need to align yourself with reviewers whose biases mimic your own, like people who prefer shooters in this way or who prefer open world games or who don't like open world games. Or if you want a quote unquote objective take on the game, then you need to immerse yourself in a diverse group of opinions of people who like lots of different kinds of games, and that it should be made very clear what each reviewer kind of likes or doesn't like. And I feel like we still, as an online gaming community on the whole or something, have not really grasped that, because the same kind of thing, whenever there is a dissenting voice that doesn't like something about a game, even if it is a valid criticism, or even if they like something about a game that is currently being dunked on for like one little thing, you are the wrong one. Mm-hmm. Even though there is no right and wrong about liking a mechanic or a way a game plays or whatever, you are seen as wrong because you're not just joining the hive mind for a little bit. And then in 5 years, we look back and we're like, yeah, that game was actually pretty good.
So much now, too, of those big macro takes. We mentioned the one or two popular ideas that pretty much everybody gloms onto. So much of that comes from big streamer playing game.
Yeah.
Says something and then immediately looks at the chat's reception, and then steer that thought in the direction that the chat backs up. I really don't want to get into the whole, like, there's so much anger about all of this stuff and streaming ruined games and all this. I don't agree with that. But it is pretty easy to see trends that appear fast from a take that was made by somebody who was multitasking. It's really hard to play a game and talk to a chat at the same time and then form a really mature and developed thought about some piece of feedback or some news. And before you know it, pitchforks are out, everybody's united and taking up this new cause because of 3 sentences big streamer said, because they got immediate feedback from their chat, and so they leaned in that direction.
And it's made worse by the game of telephone. You mentioned before people who form their opinions without doing the thing. It is seen as normal to form your opinions about a game or whatever through the lens of someone else playing it. And that's not like your opinion is inherently skewed by not having experienced it firsthand and experiencing it with the, I hate to use this word, but influence of someone else. And I, even as aware of this as I might be, especially as a creator, as someone who complains about this phenomenon, I can find myself feeling my take on a topic, on a whatever, kind of aligning with whoever is talking at the time until I go and engage with it myself. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't actually agree with that. And I'm going to sound like a little bit of a hypocrite here because for the most part, I can very easily come to a conclusion of whether I'm going to like or really truly enjoy a game based on gameplay reveals alone, because I have enough years of experience of knowing what I like and don't like that I can watch a gameplay reveal and be, as long as it's real gameplay and not just scripted whatever, like, true gameplay, I can be like, all right, I could have a good time with this, or like that one thing is going to be enough of a pain for me that I'm just not going to like it. But that comes from a lot of experience of actually playing games, and people who don't have deep experiences can't come to that same conclusion watching someone else play it. And when I say gameplay, I mean raw, unedited, uncommentated, no face cam in the corner gameplay. I'm not talking about a live stream where someone else is like just pure raw developers showing gameplay, or someone else's like no commentary let's play, like pure gameplay. Otherwise, there's other things that can influence it. But I think that without enough confidence in your experience yourself, building your opinions based on someone else's experience with the thing is a flawed strategy in general.
You want to have more fun with games. This is just my opinion.
Play them.
Yeah. Stop watching YouTube and Twitch and go try demos and go try games. I think the more you can disconnect and just go try and experience the things you're interested in, the better time you're going to have. Obviously, games are expensive and you don't want to buy a risk. It's okay to be like, hey, did this thing release content complete? What's the initial kind of like vibe on the performance? Yes. I'm not saying don't be an informed consumer, but stop forming all of your opinions about a game just by consuming so much. You've talked about this when you give tips for people creating YouTube videos. You say, stop watching YouTube and go do other things, because you're going to bring in all of this stuff that's not your own. And I'm telling you what, I am de-digitalizing my life more and more. I'm getting off of social media. I'm watching less in terms of YouTube stuff. I haven't watched Twitch in a long time. It's too busy. I'm getting older and I don't, there's very few opportunities to do that. But I really think people will become happier and more confident in their own opinions and their choices, because games are unique to a film or music, because the only way to experience truly what a game is to play it. You don't know what a game feels like until you've played it. And I brought this up, Armored Core 6 to me didn't really move the needle all that much when I watch the gameplay of it. When I saw somebody else playing it, And then when I picked it up and I played it, it felt really good. The controls, all of that stuff that is intangible and you can't experience from just watching. I really love the game, and I wouldn't have known that just by watching. But I didn't buy Armored Core 6 at launch. I said, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's maybe for me. I'll wait for a sale. Got it on sale, and I freaking love that game. It is so rad so far.
And same thing with like story immersion. Like you can't really get immersed in playing through a story if someone else is chattering and making the decisions. Like you might watch a path in a story, but like a game like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, like unless you're there making the decisions and stuff, you're not going to become attached to the characters in the same way. And like you said with the feel, like you could watch a lot of people play the PS4 Shadow of the Colossus and never know that it plays a fair bit differently than the original because of that weird bug. If they didn't like encounter it or didn't know that it was a thing and just found it more difficult, like you could just think the game is ridiculously difficult or something instead of knowing that there was an actual bug in that remaster.
Exactly. You know, nothing's more annoying than somebody's playing through Mass Effect 2, you're watching it on Twitch, and as this key moment of dialogue happens, they're like, hey, thanks for the donut, bro. I appreciate that. Really like the 5 gifted. You're the best.
The text-to-speech starts coming in, talking over the characters or something.
Yeah.
When will you stream Fortnite again?
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break before we hop into the second half of the show.
Do you play video games? Do you have memories of those video games? You want to preserve your games, to preserve your memories, to remember things. Games. The Lost Saves YouTube channel is the YouTube channel for you. We've got game preservation guides, nostalgic deep dives into retro consoles of old, and saying goodbye to every game that has its server shut down every few months because modern gaming is fleeting and my life is meaningless. Lost Saves at youtube.com/@lostsaves. Go, watch some videos. Yeah. 5,
4,
3,
2,
Xbox One exclusive.
world premiere. All right, so you said earlier you played Halo Infinite this last week. How was that experience?
I am so mixed. So I have only played probably an hour total of the campaign. I started it a couple years ago, closer to when the game came out, on stream, which is a terrible idea for actually finishing a game because, of course, I thought I would just play the whole game on stream and never got back to it.
Yep.
So initially I played through that opening scene where you fight the big brute and whatever, but I didn't even get outside yet. So last night I made it outside and started navigating the map in the world and unlocked a couple FOB points and whatever. I felt constantly like roller coastered back and forth between, holy cow, they're actually paying tribute to the original game, and holy cow, they don't understand the original game at all. And it was so confusing. It's fun. I'm having a lot of fun. It is a big sandbox. I'm dying a lot because I'm just trying ridiculous sneaking or Rambo strategies or bouncing all over the place or whatever. But I feel like there are core tonal moments that really just kind of completely missed the mark. So you get outside when you first see the world for the first time. And I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. And it reminded me of when I first landed off the crashed Pelican on the Halo 1 level, and you start out very similarly. Like you're on a ship and you're fighting off the Covenant, and then you get out into the world, like a very similar start to the game. And I clear out the point that I'm in or whatever, and the comedic sidekick shows up with the Pelican. And they start playing the big, iconic Halo theme. And I'm like, we're on this big world. We're going to go rescue some Marines. We're back, baby. And the music keeps playing, and I am riding in a Pelican to go to point B.
Yeah.
I am not navigating. Eventually it opens up, but I am fast traveling out of control of my character to experience the world when this theme plays, instead of driving the warthog to...
Oh, I know what, yeah. No, some of those are out of place, and you're clearly like, they had something else in mind here, but this is like definitely budget and time constraints, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
This should be the moment when they play that song that I am like, oh yeah, we're Haloing, baby. And instead I'm like, Chief is just riding. We are completely missing the point of what this energy is supposed to bring to the table.
You wanted silent cartographer vibes, where you're like, it's blasting it, but you're on the Pelican for like 10 seconds, and then you hop out into the big fight. Yeah.
And then there's weird stuff like I started exploring the map, and it's like, whoa, you can go literally anywhere on this map. That's really cool. Except there's nothing to find. And eventually I made it to the end of the level, like world that it would let me go to, and I couldn't find my way back. So I'm like, I'll just restart the mission. Except it restarted it before the Pelican part for some reason.
Yeah, it's open world foray. Like there's some weird checkpointing issues and things that are even still there. And they don't update campaign anymore. Like I think since you can now, I think, just have multiplayer installed on your machine. So there's a clear fork, right?
But like I was having fun like with the game. But it's the little things that feel like modernizations that really kind of ruin the tone. The Pelican moment where you're supposed to just be driving across this big world, but also when it opens up the map and the Not Cortana is expositioning you all the things on the map. In Halo 1, you discovered those. You just navigated this crazy foreign beautiful Halo ring and you stumbled upon these things. You weren't told, here's your checkpoints and here's your hubs and here's your Ubisoft towers. And it's that kind of thing that just immediately breaks the immersion. I'm sitting here, it's 10 o'clock at night. I've got my water, I've got my snacks, I've got my ultra wide monitor. The graphics look amazing. I am in this game, and then it zooms me out and just explains to me where to go and why, instead of letting me go, because it's the same mission as Halo 1. You were driving around a not Halo ring and saving Marine squads. It is the same mission, and it is completely tonally changed by having it Ubisoftified and playing like Far Cry or something. Or like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm thinking this through. I'm watching a long play in the background right now because trying to remember my experience. I gushed pretty hard about the campaign that I really did enjoy it, and remembering back to it, I really did. I'm curious how deep into the campaign you are because, well, two things. One, we should totally play this co-op, right? I've never experienced co-op, and to be able to play this now with you online could be a ton of fun. And it's unfortunate, dude, an open world Halo game like this probably lends itself better to co-op than any of the others. And to miss it at launch is such a critical, like, bummer, right? But it's there now. We should check it out. My favorite moments in the campaign were the narrative kind of linear missions that you go to. The open world segments were fine, but it's like you said, it's been there, done that before. It's the same thing. You're going to go around, drop ships, drop the same crew of enemies down. You have a little firefight, and then you go, unlock the next FOB or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't super mind it, but there are really amazing kind of levels in there, and visually some fun fights, and the mission that brings back the most memories, and I wish there was more of it, the introductory sequence of getting to the ring when you're jumping through the first level and it's falling apart around you. When I played that, I was like, okay,
that was
go.
Such a strong start.
Yeah. And look, here's my stance on it. I think they did a pretty good job for a first attempt at a Halo game in an open world setting. But this is under the context of, if we were getting Halo games every 3 or 4 years like we used to, I don't think we'd have to look back as critically on Infinite. When we wait 10 years for a new game at this point, we talked about the next Elder Scrolls game is like this 14, 15 year potentially, behemoth wait time. There's such a higher expectation upon it. Like, if right now we were playing a new Halo campaign, I don't think I'd look back on Infinite the same way. I'd go like, hey, look, they tried open world and it's not bad, and I wouldn't mind there still being some open world Halos moving forward if we got new Halo campaigns every couple of years. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, I feel 100% the same way. If it was just another game in a series of Halo games and we knew the next one was coming or there was another spin-off coming or something, I wouldn't even blink at it. Like, I was one of those people when Halo 4 launched, the entire Halo YouTube scene just like fell apart because everyone was so divided on this game. And I was used to the cycle, and I was just like, well, we'll get another one in a couple years. It'll be fine.
Yep.
Little did I know. But with the past experiences we had, like, it was like, all right, we'll just keep iterating. We'll figure it out. They're trying to modernize it. It's cool. I didn't agree with all of it, but it's fine. And the same thing here. Like, if this was just following up Halo 5, I would have been like, yes, this is a return to form. Compared to Halo 5, this is groundbreaking. But so many years later, and what comes with these long delays is the publisher or the developers then need to feel the need to justify it more by overpromising even more. And so they're like, this is the next Halo forever, and this is our going back to our roots and blah, 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 because they have to oversell the fact that you're waiting for so long, which just doubles expectations. If it was just Halo 6 and it's like, yeah, we want to get back to our roots and start making some slightly classic Halo stuff, but with some modern stuff, I'd be like, yeah, this is freaking great. But I don't know when the next one's coming, and we're not going to talk about the Halo 1 potential thing in Unreal right now, but that would not be what I want to come next. And so the weight on this is a lot heavier. And I'm sure, like you said, if there's more linear missions, I am stoked for that. And there are some elements of it that just reek of polish. Like,
oh yeah, dude. There's some points where you're like, what?
Yeah. Some of the moments are just incredible. The acting for Weapon, not Cortana. I don't know her actual name at the moment. I don't know if the game itself has delivered it to me yet, even though I've seen it online.
The Weapon,
the not Cortana acting is so incredible. Going from Cortana, who is this sarcastic, sassy, but has a heart connection to Chief, like that kind of character, to the same kind of like voice and character portrayal, but basically a child. It comes across so well when she's like, I was built to destroy Cortana, but I don't really know why. And just the acting behind it was so strong. I was like, damn, this is conveyed so well. And the comedic interactions of your partner driving the Pelican around, and he's like, why are we running into enemy fire? You can't do this. We're going to die. It feels like both a statement of the ridiculousness of the things you've done in past games and a challenge to the character when you don't have any other people to interact with yet. They're like, you can't do it. It's basically like Cortana when she's like, bet you can't stick it. And he's like, you're on. And it's like, it feels like an engagement, a challenge to the player of like, you can't take out all these bad guys. What are you thinking? You're not that good. And you're like, and I'm like, I've been playing Halo for over 20 years. I know Chief can do it. Let's go. Like those parts of it are so strong. I hope that they can maintain that while also, I guess, kind of getting what was so good about the earlier games. And that feels so hard in any franchise these days. But like, I don't want to feel like I'm just complaining about it, but I do feel like, which is not a new take, but having only just started really playing the game for the first time this many years later, it is the first Halo game I did not play through basically on launch day. It's kind of shocking how much I feel like they missed the tone a little bit when everything else is so good.
The more you're talking about it, the more I'm hyped on it. Like hearing you bring these things up reminded me, I know a lot of people who loved 4 and 5 story feel like Infinite did a bunch of retcons to kind of reset plenty of the story elements in the universe. But I love Halo. I'm mainly a multiplayer guy. I do love the campaigns deeply. I read the first book. It was enjoyable, but I don't follow the lore and I don't pay that close attention. So I loved the choices they made in Infinite story for the most part. And I think what you just said, there are moments in that I think they're going to get you and you're going to get emotional, right? And it's not spoilery. It's just they managed to kind of bring a whole new crew of players into the universe. While still, I think players like me had tones and moments that kind of reset a lot of the choices that they made from Halo 5. I'm pretty pumped on it. Like, looking back, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad they did it. I hope it's not the only style of Halo campaign we get moving forward, but let's say now that they're under the name of Halo Studios, right? Maybe there's multiple teams working on multiple things.
That would be nice. Like,
I
what if
would
we could get? I pitch this all the time, and no studio's ever gone for it. What if we could just get a live service? I hate encouraging this, but just to compromise on where things are right now, a live service multiplayer SKU that's on its own. Then we get the mainline story SKU, and then we get like the occasional spinoff, like another ODST style game or another Reach style game or some more Halo Wars. Like we get these parallel things rather than as we have both, even just a couple of days ago, we always argue for like complete packages. But if they are incapable of that today, then give us separate bespoke complete packages. If you can only focus on a campaign at a time, then give us a really darn good campaign while someone else is focusing on multiplayer.
I agree. I agree with all of that. And I was just thinking, I am so impressed, I guess, with the campaign in terms of Slipspace seems like it's a disaster.
Right.
Just judging by the frequency of updates for multiplayer and just all the stuff right around Halo Infinite dialogue online. Getting the campaign that we got, to me, it's like, wow, they really put something pretty decent together, in my opinion. Again, if you were listening to this and you're like, Dragoon, you're an idiot, I hated it, it was the worst, that's totally cool too. I'm so biased when it comes to Halo. There's no way for me to be objective.
I love Halo so much. That's why it hurts when it trips.
Okay, well, this universe of a UE Halo franchise, okay, if they can get Unreal Engine looking and feeling great, let's ignore any of the subtleties there of like,
yeah,
maybe it won't feel like Halo, maybe it won't look like Halo. At least then you can outsource to different studios and for the first time bring in other players, because if we had a new open world-ish Halo game or expansion every couple of years, I would love that. As long as we're getting new Halo stuff, I don't want 10-year things anymore. Right? It's the worst buzz phrase I've ever heard when it's like, this is a 10-year journey. No. Please give us a new game every 3-4 journey. Yeah. We need to play this on co-op, dude. This game is really cool, and I imagine it would be a ton of fun. And there are some story moments that you're going to be like, this was sick. They really did some cool, nostalgic things here. Not perfect, but for what a dumpster fire it seems like the rest of the game was in terms of how long for them to add content, to patch things, to, I mean, the 9-month season that we experienced on the multiplayer side, and here's your free winter update. You know, like, I'm very happy. I think it could have been a lot worse. And ultimately, my guess is Breath of the Wild was the hottest commodity, right, at the time. And so developers are gamers. I'm sure that entered the minds of their discussions. And, well, what if we made a Breath of the Wild-y Halo game? And we got that. And it's kind of cool. And I'm not super into open world. I prefer linear. But as long as, you know, it's a good game and we're not sacrificing any other type of Halo experience just for this, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. That's the hard part about chasing trends, is that delay. And I've brought it up, you know, with Concord and other stuff. But like, I just saw a tweet from one of my buddies who's like a hardcore Let's Player. He's a full-time Let's Player for like the Elder Scrolls games and Baldur's Gate and that kind of stuff. And he's like, I sincerely am looking forward to 2028, when all the studios who got an okay on their budget to make Baldur's Gate 3 competitors release their awesome games. And it will feel really out of place in 2028. But as someone who loves those games, I will eat good. And it's like, yeah, that's ultimately the problem, is competing with something 6-8 years after the fact is really kind of awkward. And it feels like a unique perspective for Halo. It just, I can feel, I guess circling back to my original point, like I can feel how they were trying so hard to give the nudges of like, hey, we're going to do this Halo 1 style again. And then you have the layer of the trend stuff on top that kind of pulls you out of it. I think there's a happy compromise. I don't think it ruins the game. Like I said, there's still so much that I love, and I'm looking forward to getting through those story moments. And I think the world as it plays out would be a ton of fun for co-op. So I definitely want to do that. It's just like you said, I waited so long for this and then added a couple years myself because I just wanted to distance myself from the discourse about it before I experienced it, that expectations run wild in both directions. Like both, I expect it to be amazing because of the wait, but also like I expect it to be horrible because of the years of discourse, that it's hard to know where to feel.
I get all this. You're getting me more amped the more we talk about it and the more I'm watching this long play. I'm like, I want to go play this story again. I got through about half of it on Legendary, and it had some challenge for sure on Legendary. Yeah. And maybe if there's a little more enemy variety, and maybe that's what I'm saying, a Halo Infinite 2 on the campaign side, where they could take this blueprint, which I imagine most of the dev time was designing this completely new blueprint for an open worldy Halo. Okay, you've got the foundation, now build upon it. We're always talking about, we love studios that kind of master their craft and keep making that type of game and improve upon it. FromSoft, great example. It just keeps getting better. And if you like that kind of game, it keeps just getting better.
Yeah.
So a Halo Infinite 2 or whatever, 3 years with a really solid studio behind this kind of concept, you could do something rad, but don't take away linear, awesome Halo campaigns. I've said this so many times. You've said this so many times. Where's the Covenant Slayer? We need a Doom 2016 in the Halo universe. M for mature. The Spartan is out there just going nuts on the Covenant. You could do something phenomenal. Hire id. Who cares, right?
Right.
Make that. Don't they own? Microsoft owns them now, right? Or is that just Bethesda?
They got both. I mean, it's technically both.
So, yeah, come on, let's go. But don't take them away from Doom games, of course. I'm really excited.
I want to circle back to something you said really, really quick before we wrap this.
You totally.
Said talking about it with me was getting you amped to play it. And that just took me back to what you said a little bit earlier, or at least what I interrupted what you were saying to say, in that to enjoy games more, you just kind of need to play them. And I think that kind of ties into, if you just spend so much of your time sitting in the discourse, even if it's skewing positive, like just sitting in the discourse versus playing the games, objectively, you're going to have a worse time than just playing games.
I agree. Dude, I agree.
I think it just shows an example of this. Like you and me are chatting about something personally, and it gets us amped to play it, and we're going to have the most fun playing it by going and playing it, not by taking it to Twitter or whatever to repeat the takes that we just had today.
This is going to be a weird jump, but there's a connection here.
Yes.
I added up how much time in a day, or I tried to, I just automatically click on YouTube or I click on Twitter and I scroll. Because on the little moments where I get bored, where there's a task I don't want to do, oh, look, there's the bookmark. I just click there. Let's browse some thumbnails. Is there a video I want to add to watch later? And maybe I only spend a minute on the site or 5 minutes on the site or whatever, but I just keep adding up that time. And at the end of the day, you're like, oh my gosh, anytime I got bored today, I clicked on this, I scrolled that. That's 30 minutes. Some days it's an hour. Some days it's more. And I think about that as time gets more precious, and I go, okay, I would love an extra hour to play a game or an extra 30 minutes to play a game. Thinking about my backlog, how many games could I get through if I took that extra 30 minutes of wasted time and used it towards something else? Go for it.
I want to also pose that it doesn't have to be put directly towards much. Like there's a trend right now of videos of like how I replace doom scrolling with micro learning or something, and that is still effectively a source of stress.
Optimizing your time.
That is still putting cognitive load on yourself. The time could just be spent letting your mind wander for a minute and process your day or whatever. Like,
great.
You got to learn to be okay, just like vibing for a minute.
You brought up shower thoughts, right? Where so many ideas. I work through a lot of emotions. Like if there's something irritating me at work or whatever, and I didn't even know it, I'll like finish with the shower and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm pissed off. And I'm like just thinking through and isn't that weird? We don't have any moments of silence, right?
Nope.
Well, it still ties in exactly with where I'm going with this, because you refurbished your iPod this year.
Yes. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it is one of those steps to allow me some time to engage with something that is meaningful to me and not be interrupted. And I've seen the comments on the video that I made on the main channel about you can just turn your phone on airplane mode and play some music or something, but it's still for some people that will work. Absolutely. I'm not going to pretend it's an impossible scenario. But for many people, especially when you're already used to doing the thing, like I had to really train myself this year, especially around bedtime, to stop looking at things on my phone, because anytime I didn't immediately start feeling drowsy, I'd pull my phone off the nightstand and load up Discord, Twitter, whatever. Nothing meaningful was happening. I was just looking to occupy my mind while I waited to feel sleepy. And inherently that just made me not feel sleepy because I was putting off the process of sleeping. But when you have trained your body with muscle memory, even like think about the number of times you've stopped for just a second and your hand reaches to your pocket. You pull out your phone and you go to tap on something. I have someone in my Discord who said they've been trying to break this habit of theirs. And so they deleted those apps on their phone, but they will still like almost instinctively pull out their phone and tap on the same spot and accidentally open something else because they still are used to just opening whatever apps. When you are so used to that, it is so hard to not see the phone as a gateway into all these things. And like, especially if you have responsibilities or children or spouses or anything like that, you can't just completely mute your phone and like not have it available. And so the phone itself is still going to be a source of interruption to the thing you're doing. Whereas the iPod, it allows me to just put in headphones or to even plug it in something and have something that will just play my music. There is so much value, to some people at least, in purpose-built devices that, yes, I can get really good-looking photos on my phone, but I have to use a third-party app that bypasses all the processing. I have to take all these extra steps. Or, as someone who cares about taking good photos, I can carry my camera with me, and the thing will do the job it's meant to do. And I will still use my phone for quick snapshots with my family and stuff because it's the easy tool to do so. But when it's harder to do the thing on the all-in-one device, you are losing something in the process. And the same thing with music. I still, even after this iPod thing, I still engage with streaming media to discover new music, to stream in situations where the iPod doesn't work, but it's not my default anymore. And there are a lot of reasons we could get into why I did this, but ultimately it was a quest of intentionality.
Yep. For the people who make their smartphone work for them, that's awesome. And they're amazing. I won't be able to probably get rid of my smartphone,
Right?
But I flash modded my iPod Classic this year. We've been talking about it for a long time. I don't have very much music on it, but one of the rules that you have for your iPod is you have to like own the disc, right?
Yes.
What are the rules for when you're putting the music on the iPod? Do you remember those?
I think it was 3 main rules I established. One is that I have to legitimately acquire it. And that is not a rule everyone needs to obey, but it feeds into a second rule, which I'll explain in a minute. But part of it is because I want to support the artists that make the music I want. There's a whole lot of drama with record labels and whatever. But ultimately, streaming music does not pay the artists anything, like basically nothing. And if I'm going to get this much value in media from someone, I want to pay for it. I want to contribute. Buying a CD or a digital download or whatever contributes more financially than most other things a musician or a band or whatever will ever do. And that is a big deal. And not everyone can afford it. You can't obviously buy every album you've ever heard on Spotify. That's not really the point. It's like listening to the radio versus what you truly care about and keep at home. I want to buy the things that I care about the most and put them on there. So it has to be stuff I've either bought digitally, ideally bought physically and ripped in some capacity, or like if I've bought a vinyl, then I can just get the digital download with it or something. My second rule feeds from that, in that I only want stuff on the iPod that I'm going to listen to. These days, even if you're using files instead of streaming, it's so easy to just like get an artist's entire discography, like every CD they've made for 50 years. And it's like, I'm not going to listen to all of those, or like the live version and the studio version, or the extra alternate concert version. Like, it was so easy, especially in the rampant world of other ways to acquire music, that you could just get everything. And that's one of the downsides of streaming media for me is, and we've talked about this with games recently, of like, if you have a list of everything under the sun, it's harder to feel like the choice you made is the right one and a meaningful one. Because it's like, well, I could be listening to this and I started developing a thing where like if I saw on my playlist that I had enough bangers back to back, I'd start skipping songs halfway through. I'd be like, all right, I've heard enough. I want to hear that one now.
Yeah.
And that is so wrong in some ways.
Choice paralysis. It sucks. It's a thing, right? Like I have my old iTunes library from college and high school, and it's just full of a bunch of junk. And yeah, there's some good stuff in there, but it's not very curated. And so I love this idea of what you're putting on, you are intentionally wanting to listen to in a way that doesn't tax you from that choice paralysis perspective. I'll push back against the people who say, hey, throw it in airplane mode and use your phone, or you can still do all of this with streaming. Yes, you can. It's really not about anything other than intentionality. Here, I want you to listen to this, if it's going to play the sound effect. So that was really low, but this is my Canon PowerShot. This is an old point-and-shoot camera.
Yes.
I bought this right before I went to college, and it's got that ridiculous 2000s kind of vibe when you look at these images. Eight whole megapixels, Epos.
Oh, yeah.
8 of them. Count it.
8 of them.
And I've been shooting photos with this, and I love it. The photos look different, but when I pull out my phone to take a shot, oh, what's that? Is that a notification from work? Yep. All of a sudden, I'm in a thought spiral because somebody didn't complete their task, and now it's on me. And it unlocked a whole new world. Instead of just taking a photo, enjoying the moment, I am pulled somewhere else. My time is hijacked.
Yeah, even if you're not engaging with it.
Yes. So you can either like build ridiculously over the top focus modes, which I have done, but guess what? It still gets through. And I don't even have the self-control a lot of the times. Even if I have work email silenced, I have that fearful thought of like, oh my gosh, what if something bad is happening and everybody hates me at work? I need to look and see.
Yep.
I don't have the self-control to do otherwise, you know?
Yeah. And it's the same thing with me every morning if I don't immediately have to rush out of bed. And I still do this now, even though I've been talking about it. Like it's I've trained myself to stop using my phone before bed. After bed, I'm still working on. But like there's some mornings where I don't immediately jump out of bed and I will open YouTube Studio and refresh my comments. There is nothing I need to do with comments in the morning. There is no comment on the planet, unless someone's doxing me maybe. But even then, like there's no comment on the planet that I need to act on immediately. At best, it's getting me in work mode before I'm even fully awake, which is not a good idea because my brain's not ready yet. At worst, someone said something really nasty and now I'm starting my day off in a bad place. And either way, like I haven't assessed what the day is going to be, what I'm feeling in my body, what I'm wanting to do for the day, and I'm already trying to engage with YouTube comments. Like that's not smart. But there's always, by having access to everything, you feel so tempted to engage in things you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, I don't like my emotions being hijacked.
Yes.
Because of notifications or seeing the marketing or doing all those things. And so, yeah, I've kind of loved this iPod. And it's not perfect. And it actually is, it's got more friction to it than just pulling up my smartphone. The mod didn't go perfectly. This is like an old hand-me-down 5th gen iPod that I have. So yeah, sometimes it doesn't boot. Sometimes it gets stuck at a boot cycle that I have to plug it in for to fix it. When I put it on the car, sometimes it locks it or it crashes or whatever. So it's not actually easier in many ways. But when it's like running and when I get it going, it's my favorite commutes ever. Because if I press skip and go to that next track, it's like, oh, yeah, dude, this song is great. I love this. Versus, oh, cool, let's throw Spotify on. And oh, the next 30 minutes are brought to you ad-free because I'm about to listen to 14 ads back to back. Thanks, Spotify, for giving me that ad-free break. Oh, what? Look at that. I'm at work. The drive's over. Didn't get to listen to music.
Yes, dude, yes.
Can we talk about this? Oh, no, go for it.
I was just going to say, and there's so many weird quirks, like Spotify and most services can't technically shuffle anymore, which doesn't make any sense. So you just get like repeats of chunks of your playlist, or they'll start throwing in recommendations even though you said to listen to one thing. Like the new Linkin Park album came out today. So yesterday they had a few songs already out. Like I was like, all right, just play Linkin Park. And after a few minutes, I know the band very well. I know I did not make it through anywhere near their entire like library of tracks. It just starts throwing in other bands. And granted, it's relevant stuff that, I like and would listen to because I like this band or whatever. But it's like, I said play this band. Why are you playing these other bands? Like, what?
Streaming sucks. I'm just gonna say it. It's there's some services that are killer, but
they all have issues. Like everyone wants it's one of those things where everyone will just argue that you're on the wrong one. I personally have not used Spotify ever, and they continue to just be a terrible company. I used it for a little bit back like 10 years ago, but like I used YouTube Music for a while because it came with my YouTube Premium. It had some great things. It had some terrible things. A lot of people brought up in my iPod video that Apple Music is lossless, and it's included with my Apple subscription. So when I do stream now, I stream with Apple Music because it's already paid for, but that's the one that just suddenly started throwing in extra bands. Like they all have some sort of issue. None of them are just like a magic replacement.
I also just want to own this stuff that I own. Yes. I don't want to pay a subscription for the rest of my existence and then never own it. I can look behind me. In the closet is a bookshelf, and there are Switch games, Wii U, PlayStation 1, PS2, 360. It's like basically all the games I've held on to over the years. Now, I oftentimes would go to GameStop, trade in old games, and get credit because, look, when you're younger, money was not like, I could not buy stuff that easily, but I regret so many games that I traded in. I traded in my GameCube. So mad that I did that. Okay? I'm hoarder status at this point for my old consoles and my games. But you know what's, now we've lived through this, and it's happened to where many online marketplaces have been shut down, and we're losing access to things that you have bought.
And it's not just old stuff. There are plenty of new movies or like new movies and shows or even games that shut down really quickly, get pulled off, get canceled, whatever. And if you didn't have a physical copy, you don't have access to it anymore.
And 3DS eShop and the Wii U eShop, those are not that old of a system to be gone. I've played a lot of my 3DS the last year, basically, for the same reasons that I'm using an iPod and a point-and-shoot camera. It just games. I don't have any notifications. It just plays games, like it's really so good games.
Than when you got Steam notifications and Discord notifications and email pinging in the background and a second monitor with Twitter pulled up or the news.
But we're losing access to so much of this stuff. And I would much rather have physical media to pick it off the shelf, to hold it in my hand, because in 10 years, guess what? I don't think I'm going to have access to re-download the digital games I bought on PlayStation 3.
Nope.
That ship is going to sail at some point, and they're going to be like, well, we've supported it for long enough. You bought that stuff. Yes, if you look at the terms and services, you bought a license, right? Go buy the real thing. And it's really worrisome when I look at the move to diskless consoles, and you're really just buying an empty box for some of these games, and then you just download it off the store. It's like, but let's talk about this, because you're big time into physical media preservation. What do you think about the real kind of game experience, owning it versus emulation or the digital downloads?
I am mixed. I am someone who has a giant collection of physical games. I have it on almost every console, as well as even, my pre-2010s PC game collection. I've got a lot of those big boxes up on a shelf and whatever. But I also have a Steam library of like 1,200 games. I'm not afraid of owning digital if it's an option, like a good option or the only option. But I also worry all the time. At some point, something is going to happen to Valve. They have been great. They have been stable. They have been a pillar of PC gaming for a very long time. Nothing lasts forever. And if some scandal, it turns out Gabe Newell is chasing bears across the ocean like John McAfee or something. Not realistic, but something absurd is going to come up that we don't expect. Either the company's going to face hard times or someone's going to do something bad. Eventually it will go away. And that is 1,200 games that I will have zero rights to do anything with when that happens. Yeah. Games that I have played, games that I have yet to play, games that I'm effectively saving for retirement at this point, that I won't be able to engage with if that happens. And that is terrifying. This is an extreme thing, and I'm just illustrating it because of its extremity. But like, I'm going to the point of any games I own on GOG, which if you've never heard of is a wonderful platform for preservation. They give you, if you buy games there, they don't have any DRM. You just get the installer. You play the game. You don't need anything else. And so I am downloading my games that I've bought on there and burning them to Blu-rays because I still keep my own physical burnable media. So I have a physical backup in case they go offline. I still have my copies of the game that I bought that I will be allowed to play forever. But the difference is very important to me. And it's easy to look at someone like me, and I'm going to use myself as the bad example on purpose because of a comment you made just to like illustrate the point. Someone like me with shelves and shelves of games and be like, that's hoarder stuff. I don't want a house full of stuff. I don't like that. That is totally fine. The situation that you just described of being kind of devastated that you traded in your GameCube back in the day. I've had plenty of similar games that I'm still buying back that I traded into GameStop. That is an advantage of the physical medium.
Yeah.
At the time, you were done with it.
Yep.
You had your GameCube, you used it, you got a good life out of it,
I
and
got
you're
value.
like, I want to buy
Yeah.
something else.
Yep.
The thing I have still holds value, and someone else could use it. And I'm going to move on from it, get value back to me that I can then use to contribute to new experiences. For a while, trading games into GameStop was like the best thing ever. Sure,
Yes.
There's jokes about how little money they give you. But finishing a game or deciding you don't like a game, taking it up there, getting $20, $30 to spin around and come home with a new game when you were already broke and couldn't just buy the game outright?
Yeah.
That's the only way we could play games for a while. I just, it's easy to think about it as like, oh, I have to hoard all this stuff. I need all these CDs. That's why we continue to harp on the intentionality aspect. It's not that you should buy every game. It's not that you need to buy a CD for every artist you hear on streaming media, because you wouldn't do that if you heard it on the radio or anything else. But the ones you really care about, the ones you want to engage with regularly, the ones you care about being able to continue enjoying for days, months, years to come, those are the ones you pick up. Those are the ones you grab. And
Yes.
that's what matters.
Yeah, I'm not really much of like a collector. I don't want to go out and buy all the games for the system. No problem if people want to go do that, but everything on the shelf behind me is stuff I have memories with and things that I've played and I want to finish and I want to beat. And more, I'm buying physical. With my Switch, I love the idea of digital because I don't want to have to carry all those cartridges around. It kind of defeats the point of the system, right? Take this thing with you anywhere. I'm on the completely different side of the fence now at the end of this generation. I am purposely buying physical for everything Switch because I know that marketplace is going down at some point. Obviously, the news that Switch 2 is going to carry forward the support for Switch 1. We'll probably extend it. But there is something
Nintendo
about...
cuts things quick. Like...
Oh, for real. If it's not working, it's gone, you know? And I don't know, maybe it's stupid, but I'm holding here from earlier in our conversation my $10 used GameStop copy of Metal Gear Solid 4. And there's something pretty cool about opening it up and seeing the receipt from 2011. This feels real. It feels authentic, and somehow it's different. You talked earlier about when you have endless access to everything, it's not the same. Sometimes emulation is the same thing. Sometimes the fact that I can pull up PCSX2 and play like basically any PS2 game, it's not the same. It's not as fun. I don't finish things. I'm always, like you talked about with music, skipping to the next track, looking for that next better experience. Whereas I bought God of War 3 at a mom and pop game shop a few towns over the other day. I'm playing it. I love it. I know I'm going to finish it because I bought the real thing. Does that make sense?
Yes. And that's why I encourage, even if you do something like the iPod or you have Game Pass or whatever, sure, use the streaming option as like a demo if there isn't demos. Use it to try before you buy. But then if you want to truly own the experience and really experience it, buying matters. And I feel the same way. I always come back to, I have a bunch of pictures from my setup in like 2015. And on my desk, I have this one stack of like a shelf, one of those little small vertical game shelves. And it is effectively my entire case, at least, PS3 and Xbox 360 collection with a couple Wii U games and a couple PS2 games. But in this one little tower, is all of the games I truly owned on 360,
Yeah.
other than my Halo titles. But, you know, I've got like Dragon Age 2, I've got Gears of War, LA Noire, Dragon Ball, Raging Blast 2, Mass Effect. And then on PS3, I've got that Metal Gear HD collection you talked about. I've got Uncharted 3, Destiny, Doom 3, the God of War games. And those games, even the ones I haven't beaten, I have so many fond memories attached to because they were the ones I set there and they shaped my view of that generation because they were the ones I chose to surround myself with and really keep like top of mind. And you talk about you got the GameStop receipt. My favorite thing, and I make an effort to still do this whenever possible so that I can have that memory later. My favorite thing with game cases is to find an old receipt or like old printouts of cheats or secrets or something and that has the date on the top from like GameFAQs or something.
Yeah.
Like even if it's now, like I have my Champions of Norath copy on PS2. I have a printout of like unlocks and stuff from 2017. And 2017 is not, you know, a nostalgic year necessarily for a PS2 game.
Yeah.
But it's going to preserve that memory of every time I go back to it and I try to like re-engage with those things, just keeping that log going effectively. And it's one thing to get your recommendations from a streamer, a YouTube video or whatever. Every time you bring up the receipt, I think back to, I have 2 PS3 games where I back-to-back consistently engaged with the cashier at GameStop. Typically, I've been going to GameStop for a very long time. We used to go to a local game shop before that shut down, and then I switched to GameStop. Rarely do they give any input into the games I'm picking. Usually they're just like, they ring you up, try to sell you on warranties and whatever, and you're good.
Yeah.
This dude consistently, every time I went in there, would take the role. They're called game advisors when you work at GameStop. He actually took that role seriously. And I remember I went in there, I watched that Wrath guy I mentioned before playing Demon Souls on YouTube, and I'm like, I want to play this fantasy game. I haven't played a game like this in forever. It looks great.
Yeah.
I picked it up, and he's like, do you know what this is? I'm like, yeah, it looks great. He's like, are you sure you're going to be able to play it? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's really hard. Like, I don't know if you're going to like this, dude. And I'm just like, nah, it's fine, whatever. And he's like, all right. He rang me up. I took it home. I took it back the next day. Because GameStop has like a 24-hour return policy. And it was a used game. So like they're good with that. Yeah. And he's like, I told you, man. I told you. And I was just like, I couldn't do anything. And I'm pretty sure the point I gave up on was that first, I forget its name. I just did it again yesterday. But that first big boss that is designed to kill you and introduce you to the Nexus.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. And so I kept reloading, trying to kill this thing. And I'm just like, I can't do it, man. I can't do it. And he's just like cracking up. He's like, I told you. And then I pick out some Dragon Ball Z game because I loved the PS2 ones. It was like Ultimate Tenkaichi or something. And it was apparently a very poorly reviewed one. And I had no idea. Yeah. And he was just like, all right, dude, this one is not good. You know that, right? And I was just like, it's Dragon Ball Z. It can't be that bad. I hadn't trusted this dude's opinion yet. He got me once. I wasn't sure. I took it home, and it was the worst Dragon Ball game I had ever played. I took it back the next day, and he's like, man, what are you doing? I keep telling you. And I'm like, all right. And then he navigated me to picking up, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think that might have been how I finally got into Heavenly Sword. By that point, a bargain bin game. But I'm like, I just want to play more on the PS3. I love my PS3 so much. I need more games for it. And he's like, have you played this one yet? It was like a launch title or something. And I was just like, no. And he's just like, do you like God of War? Yeah. You want to play this? And that's how I got into Heavenly Sword. And it was just like this back and forth with this guy around like Thanksgiving time.
Yeah. Oh.
And it means so much to me to have those experiences attached to picking up a game. And you can still have that with some digital ones. There are plenty of games we've played that way. But you take that and you combine it with the other elements of, like we have repeated this entire podcast so far, you know, intentionally engaging with it. You have a small shelf of games that really mean something to you. So when you choose between them, you're really picking your experience. You're not just like channel surfing some games and then ending up unsatisfied at the end. Like, you really know what you're going to get into. And you got all sorts of good stuff on the back about the game, on the case, on the manual that'll have secrets or controls. The number of times, even now, especially for like obscure fighting games or something, I will pull up a manual and be like, how the hell do I do this thing? It is still useful today.
I'm looking through the Metal Gear Solid 4 manual right now, and to explain the controls and the mechanics. In the game's art style, they have a comic book that's the upper half, teaching you how to do every of the main mechanics here in the game. I would like to say, if by some strange coincidence, this incredible GameStop advisor that helped Epos all those years ago is listening, please get in touch with Epos or myself. I want you on the show.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Want to hear about your recommendations because, yes, that's somebody who deserves serious props because you worked at GameStop. You know, when we were doing Destiny the show, Diddy worked at GameStop. And no, gosh, all of my videos where I talk about Diddy, Ditty, epic Halo YouTuber, and awesome friend. He helped. We did Destiny the show for years, and all of these comments are coming back. It's like, my friend Diddy. And it's just like, gosh, I hate so much, dude. Like, no.
Yeah, my personal best friend, Sean P. Diddy Combs, who I would totally bring up at this point in time.
Gosh, he worked at GameStop. Doesn't sound like there's any incentive to go above and beyond. And this GameStop advisor left a lasting mark on you because he cared.
Yes.
That's cool.
And it showed me the value of trusting someone else's opinion and stuff. But I also wanted to say we started out talking about the PS3. Speaking of physical stuff and demos and everything we've talked about, I have, just coming full circle, I have in my hands the Zone of the Enders HD collection for PS3.
Yep.
Which is already, because of the HD era, you get a couple PS2 era games packed together. Because of the Blu-ray medium, you get both of them on disc. And so many PS3 games would come with a whole behind-the-scenes documentary on the same disc because they could fit it on there, or comic books, or soundtracks, or whatever. This one also includes, on top of all the other goodies it probably has, a demo for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Yes.
The demo that blew my mind. I sat through all 4 of the first Metal Gear games with my buddy who loves them to death because I didn't have the patience for the stealth. I didn't have it in me. I still remember with the first Metal Gear, I think it was the first one, when he had to knock on the wall to find the hollow spot and then drop a grenade there. I would have never begun to figure that out at that point in my gaming career. The idea that you have to be that creative and sleuthy to progress a game just did not work for me. So I watched him play through all of it. Having the context of not liking Metal Gear that much, sucking at it, but loving the vibe, loving Kojima, loving the story, whatever. And then popping in that demo, I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a try. It's the next Metal Gear. And it being just that completely different of an experience and such a good one.
Yeah, dude. Platinum Games was cooking. Yes.
Right here on this other game, just a demo of it bundled with this game that I played was such a cool incentive. I always sought out physical games that had demos for other ones because you got more value.
Just the thought of Raiden picking up Metal Gear Ray by the sword and throwing it around. It is so anime. I love it. Those are the games I want. That's what I want to see off the wall franchises doing, where it's this isn't really canon, but we just let Platinum go to town and Raiden have the sickest ninja third person game ever.
That's Speaking what we want with the Halo Covenant Slayer game idea. Just let them have at it for a bit.
That would be, Master Chief could go on the Covenant in an M-rated,
especially if you've read the
game.
First book, the way they describe how fast he can move and stuff. He can boost jump and especially with the grapple hook now, he can fly across the map. He can totally do that.
I want Metal Gear Rising now on disc. I have it on PC, and I've gotten it running well, and it's fine and stuff. But you have to do all that extra things. There's something about owning the physical that just changes it. I think this is a good spot to cap off this first episode. Man, this was a ton of fun, and I want to thank everybody in our previous discussion videos who said, hey, give this a shot. If you made it to the end of the show, really, really, really appreciate it. Epos, where would you like people, if they enjoy your thoughts, your comments, where can they find you?
Lost Saves on YouTube for primarily relevant stuff here. Gaming videos, nostalgia, deep dives on consoles like the PS3 coming up. I just made a video saying goodbye to Battlefield 3 on the 360 because they just shut those servers down. Lots of that kind of stuff where it's engaging with what we love about gaming with the skew towards older stuff most of the time.
Yep. And I'll leave all that link down below. We don't even have a name for this podcast yet. We're going to have to figure that out, throw it up at the front. If you enjoyed this, just let us know in the comments. Any topic ideas would be super helpful as well.
Yes.
The idea here is you can listen to this. We'll have it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and whatever other RSS players there are out there. It should be available on the playlist or the podcast section of YouTube, which I guess is new, like on my channel page or something.
Yes.
But the goal is just, I don't know, to bring the old, chill gaming discussion vibes of early Machinima Respawn days and turn it into this, just friends talking about games. And I can't say when we'll get the next one done. We're definitely gonna do more, but maybe it's once a month, maybe it's twice a month. Who knows? We'll just wait and see. But I just want to thank you, Epos. This is like some of the most fun conversations I have, and it reminds me pretty much of going down the hall in the dorm room and playing Smash Brawl with a bunch of buddies and just yelling at the screen. This is really a reminder of the good stuff that can come from just gaming and tech and life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I got into this field, basically, is to be able to have these kinds of conversations with someone that I would have never probably come across in person. But we've been friends for like 13 years now. Like, this is my most favorite kind of stuff to make. So thank you.
Our first conversation, I was typing to you in Steam while playing Half-Life 2 for the first time on a Mac. I will never forget that. And yeah, just thank you. I want to just appreciate everybody being here. Have a great week or month or whatever. Good holiday times, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And go play a game.